Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Through this podcast, we will be introducing you to some of the leaders and legends in our village. We'll keep you updated about fascinating local events. We'll dig into the town's hot topics and so much more. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Jeanne Johnson, the founder of Ridgewood Talks and Ridgewood Walks. The goal of these initiatives is to create a kinder, more connected, and more vibrant community. I'm thrilled to be hosting this podcast with my good friend and all-around wonderful guy, Jordan Kaufman. We look forward to meeting with you weekly and hearing your thoughts on who and what you'd like to learn about in our beautiful hometown. For now, be kind, do good, and enjoy this episode. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Today we're tackling a topic that comes up all the time in neighborhood chats, local meetings, and social media threads, and that is Ridgewood Water. So today we're lucky to have two key people to break it all down. Village Manager Keith Kazmark and Director of Ridgewood Water, Rich Calbi, they're here today, and we're going to talk about everything from water quality to PFAS concerns to infrastructure upgrades, watering schedules, and what's being done to make sure that our water system stays safe and reliable well into the future. So thank you, gentlemen, for being with us, and let's just start it right off. I know the name is Ridgewood Water, but let's talk about who does Ridgewood Water serve?
So Ridgewood Water serves four communities, Glen Rock, Midland Park, Wyckoff, and Ridgewood. About 61,000 residents drink our water every day. Wow. 21,000 customers, billable customers.
That's impressive, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people just think that, it's just a local utility. And I want to talk about what, Keith, you can probably tell us what the breakdown is in leadership. Tell us about that.
So Rich is the director of Ridgewood Water. It is a separate utility, although under the auspices of the village of Ridgewood. And he works with the four mayors from each town, the four administrators, to make sure that we're properly delivering water in a safe and effective way. We have a lot of infrastructure investment happening right now, and he's got a great team that works with him. From the engineering division to the operations division. We have people who are on staff 24/7, making sure that we're properly delivering water to the customers we serve.
That's good to know, 24/7. So I think one of the things that's really important to me, Rich, is that people know that that our water source is in good hands. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how long have you been in this business?
I've been in this business for 30 years, with Ridgewood for 10, in government for about 25. Started off in the private sector, primarily designing water systems for private developers in New Jersey and New York. Did that for about 6 years, and then decided to get into government service. Started off with the city of Clifton, kind of springboarded my way amongst four municipalities, landing here finally in Ridgewood. Being that's close to home, 7-minute commute is great.
Oh, nice, yeah.
I could tell you it's been the toughest of any of the jobs that I've had. Running Ridgewood Water is a challenge, but it's challenges based on the geography of the area that we serve.
Okay.
Delivering water, safe water to 61,000 people a day is a serious duty, and every single person that works for Ridgewood Water takes that duty to heart every day when they do their job.
So now that you are the director, what steps led up to it in terms of your education?
Sure. So I have a bachelor's of science in civil engineering, also a master's of science in environmental engineering, both from New Jersey Institute of Technology here in New Jersey and various other certifications. NJIT provides a very practical education that's kind of leveraged me into not just running the organization's Ridgewood Water, but really knowing what it takes to do it on the ground. And that's kind of been instilled in every person who does a job every day. People just don't come to Ridgewood Water because it's a job.
Right.
They come there to do a job, and they love what they do.
Yes.
And they don't just sit at a desk every day. They're out in the field doing it to make sure that water's always running at that tap.
I have to tell you that I have spoken to several of your employees, and I can't even tell you how passionate they are. Like, they get down into the nuts and bolts of everything, just like and I don't understand much of it, but they are very excited about what they do. So tell us, how many employees do you have?
So currently we're about 50 full-time employees. We have one part-time employee, and those range from everything from outside operations to inside operations, engineers, financial staff. We also have an information systems group that does all our internal mapping of the system. We have programmers, information technology staff that runs our computer systems, our control systems, and then operators that do the 24/7 operation of the system.
And Jeanne, I think it's important to note that since Rich has been with Ridgewood Water, the entire leadership team has been restructured. There are a lot of new faces, a lot of professional staff that's come in with a solid educational foundation and a lot of experience in this space. And some of them are Ridgewood residents, so they actually care about what happens
I really
here
love that,
because it affects their own families and their neighbors. So I think it's just important to note that, you know, Ridgewood Water, I think, had a rocky period before Rich's arrival here in Ridgewood, but that leadership team has been rebuilt and restructured, and they do a fabulous job each and every day, despite the fact that there are some real challenges with our infrastructure that we're trying to work through.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of those challenges too, but before we do that, I want to compliment too. I've had an issue with my water pressure at my house, and I called, and the gal that answered the phone could not have been more helpful. And I also want to recognize what's his name, Neil Galone. Okay,
Yes.
This is a fourth generation person working for Ridgewood Water. That speaks volumes about I guess the dedication that some of your employees have, right?
And a legacy, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it goes deeper than that. A lot of the employees come recommended from prior employees or current employees. We have several siblings.
Oh, nice.
We have brothers. We have brother and sister. So it's a family organization, and that helps us run it day to day.
Right. That's so great. So I think I want to dig into a few of the issues that took place before you started. And there was talk about selling the utility to another company. I really want you to help. Maybe you can help us, Keith, and break that down so your customers can understand why it's really important to have leadership and management locally.
Well, even starting from your example, you know, if Ridgewood Water is to sell to a private company, when you call and have a problem, are you going to get somebody that's live right there in town? You're not getting that service from a private company. Here in Ridgewood, you could walk in our door every day and get that service. You could pick up the phone and talk to somebody that might even live in the community and understand what you're dealing with and get you the answers that you need right away. You know, selling utility, it's gone forever. You're never getting it back. It's a one-time income. You know, here you're keeping it local, controlling it locally, and controlling that destiny on how the money's invested. It's everybody's money, me included. I'm a ratepayer. I want to make sure that there's control of that. Private companies, they're answering to stockholders.
Right.
Two things I'll point out on this subject. One, when I first got here, you know, we had introductory discussions with the council, with the department heads, and we talked about the possibility, or maybe we talked about the history of the discussion when it comes to selling Ridgewood Water. The current council, looks at this as an asset, and it looks at it as something we own, something that we're charged to manage properly and manage well. But the second point I'll make is under one of my previous employers, we did an analysis of selling our water system to New Jersey American Water. And inevitably, rate increases were going to be attached to that upon sale because the private entities traditionally have the ability to increase the rates at a much more frequent pace than a public utility. So that was one of the major concerns when I was with one of my previous towns. And obviously the elected officials in that town had real concern about selling, which might have been a shot in the arm, so to speak, from a financial standpoint. But in the long term, the customers were going to see increased rates at a much more rapid pace. And at the same time, that revenue stream to sustain it was not going to be there anymore. any longer. So those are all the conversations that we've had. At this point, our major focus is improving our infrastructure,
Right.
Improving our operations, and making sure that Ridgewood Water really shines as a leader in water distribution in
And
North
that
Jersey.
that your customers can trust you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So I want to talk about that issue that I mentioned, that we are noticing a little bit of a pressure issue at our house. And interestingly, we're taping this, so I don't know when this is going to be aired, but lo and behold, right around the corner from me today, you guys are working on just that issue on Oak Street. So do you want to elaborate a little bit on that issue and why you do those things?
So, we're dealing with infrastructure that's over 100 years old. The village purchased Ridgewood Water from a company at the time known as Bergen Aqueduct. And it's, of course, grown over time into the 4 communities, especially Township of Wyckoff, post-war it developed into the community that it is today. With that came the responsibility to bear this infrastructure and improve it. And now that it's hit its end of life or beyond its end of life, it all needs to be replaced.
Right.
We've done well kind of shoring up the ability to provide water source, but we don't have a way to move it all around.
Okay.
So the project that's happening on Glen Avenue between Oak and Maple is to put a pump station in that could transfer water from one part of the system into another to help with that very issue. Take the area where we have the supply and move it up where it's needed.
Okay.
And we saw that come to a point last September, when we had to issue a boil water notice
Right.
for the upper part of Ridgewood and parts of Midland Park. And it became a serious issue. And it has to do with, number one, priorities, right? When PFAS came along, and we needed to invest $150 million, which I know we'll talk more about today, into that treatment. It sort of took some of the focus off the distribution issues because we were mandated to address the PFAS issue. We're now coming towards the end of PFAS, and we're refocusing on the distribution issues. So that event that happened last September, which Rich can talk to the technical nature of it, really shifted our administrative focus to make sure that we can get water moved around the system so that we don't have residents suffering having to deal with
Right.
a boil water notice.
Definitely. Let's dig into that boil water issue, because it does happen periodically. And why does it happen, and should your customers be alarmed?
Well, anytime the pressure drops below 20 psi, pounds per square inch, we're required to do a precautionary boil water advisory. The reason for that is because when the pipe becomes lower pressure, there's an opportunity that bacteria can get in the pipeline because it's now no longer under that high pressure where the water's moving out now it's possibly sucking in the bad stuff. So it's all precautionary. We do all testing to make sure that the bacteria didn't enter, and in both cases we found it was negative. But just as precaution, we tell people boil water, use bottled water, for drinking and cooking. But at most times, things are safe, but we have to provide that notice just to
Right.
make sure, because if the samples come back positive and there is a problem, we need to make sure that we took the steps to protect the
And if I may, that criteria is promulgated by the DEP.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's very conservative, which is understandable because public health is at risk.
Yeah.
But at no time during that event was the water unsafe, but we had to continuously test it, and we had to, as a precautionary measure, let people know that they should boil their water just in the event that we had any exceedances.
It alarms residents for sure.
course.
And then one of the other things that I hear frequently is that people can smell the chlorine or the treatment.
Sure.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Tell me what that is, and should residents be concerned?
Well, again,
about that?
because of regulation, we're now required to disinfect our water to levels that never existed before. 50 years ago, there was no disinfection or chlorination in this water. It was the best tasting water, and there's still some people here today that say that. But now, because of the regulations promulgated down from the state, in the federal government, US EPA, we have to disinfect to a very high level. So when you turn the faucet on, you're going to smell it. Sometimes you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
You're going to taste it. But that is curable very simply in two options. You could leave the water out in a pitcher. That disinfectant will dissolve in the air. Or you get a simple household carbon filter. Removes it down to 0.
And Rich, where would they be available?
The pitcher filters, you could find these anywhere.
Like the Britas?
It could be a tabletop pitcher. It doesn't have to be under a sink filter. You could buy them on the internet. Home
What
Depot,
about like my
Lowe's.
refrigerator? They have filters. Does that filter it out too?
Majority of those are carbon-based filters. They'll take out the sodium hypochlorite, which is the disinfection we utilize, which is similar to household bleach. Take
Right.
it down to zero.
So if you're running a refrigerator water line, you're with a filter.
Odds are you're taking it out to zero.
Right. And then there are other, what are they called? The other treatments that
Reverse osmosis.
Thank you, that. And are there any rebates or anything like that that people can
We
get?
don't offer any rebates for any filtration. But what I like to tell people, I never advise against filtration. There's standards that are made to protect the water and keep it safe by the state and federal government. But they still allow a certain amount, a level of contaminant in the water. So best precaution you could take is still filter your water, especially if you want to get the chlorine out and improve your taste. Reverse osmosis is kind of like the high level. It takes out a lot. But the important thing people need to understand when they put reverse osmosis is because it's removing everything, that water now can become aggressive. So you have
What
to
does
make
that mean?
it changes the pH of the water,
Okay.
and at times it can pit the copper piping in homes.
Okay.
So what people should make sure they do is they put not a filter, but a remineralization canister after the filter to put some minerals back in the water.
Because that's healthy for us,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, the RO is taking all the good stuff out of it as well.
So you mentioned copper piping. What about lead?
Lead's bad.
Yeah, I know. So in preparing for this interview, I read that some of our piping, our municipal piping, it has lead in it, and you're working on removing those pipes. Am I correct?
So there's two parts to the service line. There's the part that the utility owns and operates. That's the part from the main in the street to the curb line. And then there's the part from the curb line to the home that's
my
owned by
house.
the resident
Right.
or the customer. So the part in the street, we are working to remove those. But we only could do that in cases where the customer is doing theirs at the same time.
Right.
Because partial replacements aren't recommended. Because if you replace one end, you can then disrupt the other end and
Well,
cause...
it's probably cost prohibitive too, yeah?
Doing everything at once does help.
And understand, too, we have an aggressive program with replacement of lead service lines. So, Rich, you want to talk about the programs that have been offered to the residents in the service area?
We have several options, and the one option, they could sign up for a program where we'll do all the work. We'll then bill them over 30 years via an assessment to the property. It runs with the property, not with the owner. And it's based on the construction price that we get in the bid. And it's all funded through a very low interest program that we have joined up with the state for. It's called New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. It's a blended loan where 75% of the money is at 0% interest. The other 25% is at the state's market rate, which even beats Ridgewood's AAA rating because they're lending out billions a year.
Okay, so if you have a house, you're concerned about the water, you're concerned about the lead that might be leaching into your water, contact Ridgewood Water and set up yourself with this program and pay it off in 30 years.
Or you could do it on your own.
Yeah.
We've had dozens of customers that have decided to do it on their own, just need to let us know so we coordinate our side at the same time. But not in every place are both sides led. Some places just the customer side, sometimes just the utility side. But we're working on both ends to get them all done. It's about 1,500 to get done for the third
That's
communities.
a pretty big job to keep that database up to,
That's why we have a whole information systems department.
Yeah.
And our GIS folks do a tremendous job monitoring that, making sure that all that data is put into the system so that we have it,
And you buy a house,
prospectively.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So we talked about lead in the water, and a lot of people want to know, is there fluoride added to the Ridgewood water system?
No, we do not fluorinate the water.
And why is that?
It's not required, and I frankly don't recommend it.
Because?
It's very dangerous.
Okay. Tell me more.
You have to maintain the correct levels. And, based on at least my little knowledge of the dental world today, that they do a good job of taking care of fluorination.
Yeah, we get it in our toothpaste and mouthwash, things like that, right?
It's just another chemical that you don't want to add to the mix. There's enough we're doing to the water already Why complicate it?
Right. So let's talk about that. What are PFAS? What are forever chemicals? How do we get rid of them? Tell us. I mean, there's so much here. It might seem to the listener that this is a really boring conversation, but when you learn more about PFAS, I think it can really help us change our behaviors and what we cook with and the clothes we wear and so on. So go ahead.
So PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. There are thousands of these compounds. They keep finding more. So every time one gets regulated out, they make a new one to replace it. And they're in everything. They're in a lot of stuff. They're in dental floss. They're in coatings and popcorn bags, fast food, wrappers, clothes, Gore-Tex, Scotch Guard, fabric repellent, water repellent. So it, unfortunately, because of that pervasive use, it's gotten everywhere.
Pots and pans.
Non-stick pans. That's why they tell you if you ever scratch or damage your pans, don't ever use them again. Because that chemical is being released into your food. So PFAS has been studied by the federal government. The federal government started to take a deeper dive into it and look into health-based effects of these chemicals. And New Jersey, being in the forefront of regulation, similar to California, did their own research and decided to regulate even before the federal government did. This is what makes New Jersey's water some of the safest, because New Jersey is always ahead of the game.
I want you to repeat that. New Jersey water.
New Jersey is some of the safest water in the United States because they are always in the front of regulation and studying what's going to be next, what effect it has on health, and what needs to be done to the water to protect public health.
So what you're telling me is that the water that I get from my tap is going to be safer than the water that I get in a plastic bottle that comes from Acadia Springs or whatever it is.
It depends. A lot of bottled water is filtered and safe, but you don't see it on the label. They don't tell you what's in the water. They don't tell you what they do. But all bottled water is regulated in the state. They have to follow the same regulations as water utilities are. But nobody can tell me at the state who's the watchdog on that currently.
Well, yeah, if I buy water from, it might be shipped in from Maine, and I don't know what their regulation is. So my tap water might be safer. Am I correct?
If they're selling at a store in New Jersey, they're supposed to follow the same regulations.
Okay.
And they have to get a permit to do that, certify to the state that they're meeting all those rules. I just don't know how that's happening.
The regulations are the same, but who's doing the oversight?
Good.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's keep going with this PFAS thing and what Ridgewood Water is doing specifically to help remediate the issue.
So we tackled this very early. Even before it was regulated, we were talking about it. I brought to the attention of the council at that time, mayor council at that time, the manager at the time, and it was fully unanimous decided that we're not going to wait. So they commissioned a master plan study. We hired an engineering firm to look at our entire system and give us options on how we're going to rid our water of this very dangerous chemical. It was decided that the best option was to centralize treatment, take our 31 treatment plants that we have today and centralize them down to 12. And that involves constructing new plants, new buildings, new filters, piping millions of wells from other locations to new locations so they're in that central treatment zone. But because we did it so early, we're now so far ahead of the compliance. New Jersey has a very strict rule that you have to comply within a year when the regulation is made, but the federal government promulgating their rules, allowing everybody to 2031.
That's what I was going to say. It's mandated by 2031. The entire nation has to have this removed, right? And Ridgewood Water is way on top of it. What is the prediction?
We're going to be done 5 years before 2031.
Incredible. To what cost?
$150 million.
Which was staggering when I arrived here in Ridgewood, and I sat with Rich, and he walked me through the infrastructure investment that was being made here. But at the end of the day, as Rich said, this will likely be off our plate as far as building out the infrastructure in the end of 2026.
All right.
Which is again a ways away or a ways ahead, I should say, from the federal government mandates.
It's a huge accomplishment, but how are we paying for that? That's $150 million is a lot of money. So do your customers absorb the cost? Are there grants? How does it work?
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
So we've been fortunate that we have been able to seek some grant money. We got a congressional grant from the federal government through Congressman Gottheimer's office for one of the 12 plants, a $2.8 million grant. And that project's actively being constructed, and we've
That's
been
the Ravine
reimbursed.
plant on Goffle Road.
Okay.
Yes,
I want to
by the
get
White
into
Cloud
that
border.
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're also utilizing the same program that we're leveraging through lead service line replacements, the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. All the projects are being funded through that program, where we're getting 50% or 75% of the money, 0% interest, and then also principal forgiveness. On a yearly basis, $1 to $2 million of the principal is forgiven.
That's amazing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we are seeking funding in this year's fiscal budget from the state of New Jersey. We've been talking to state legislators for a project in Glen Rock, writing letters to the governor's office, communicating through all channels. Keith's been great with his contacts, the mayor and the mayor of Glen Rock.
Mm-hmm.
They've all done a super job, and we're hopeful that when things go to get signed in a couple weeks, that our name's going to be on there as a line item.
Yeah.
But on top of all that, and I think what's kind of in the background people don't realize, from day one, we held the parties that manufactured these chemicals responsible. We filed in court litigation against all the manufacturers. That case has now been in a multi-district litigation in South Carolina for years, and we're hopeful to get some news out of that this year. And beyond that, and this one's the most interesting to me at least, we were able to go up in the attic of Village Hall and find insurance policies that predated environmental exclusions. And we're going to seek insurance recovery from those policies for every single asset that has been contaminated with PFAS.
Right. And the one thing I want to say, Jeanne, is from day one, when I arrived in Ridgewood and Rich and I sat down and we talked about this, we made a conscious decision that we were going to overturn every rock, every possibility to secure funding, to not have this be fully on the back of the ratepayer. That is priority one when it comes to financing these projects. So whether it's securing federal money, securing state money, going out and pursuing these legal actions that exist nationally, right? Or pursuing any type of insurance claim that's available to the village, we're turning over every rock to be able to find funding sources to take the burden off of the ratepayer.
Well, I'm just going to say thank you on behalf of all of your ratepayers for working that hard to find that money. I want to go back to the litigation and name some, if you can, some of the companies that you're involved with here.
I mean, the big ones are 3M, DuPont, Chemours. Then there's smaller companies like Kitty that made fire extinguishing chemicals. Mm-hmm. And there's a dozen others that probably on the case that I can't even recall or name. But those are the big ones.
It's so complicated. So now all these companies are on the line to take care of the mess that they made. Did they knowingly do this or was it the lack of regulation? How did we get into this situation?
That's a question I unfortunately cannot answer due to the pending litigation.
I gotcha.
But you'll find that there's a lot that's going to come out when these cases are complete. And some of the stories are already told. There's a movie documentary called Dark Waters. There's something on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on there. It was called The Devil You Know. Mm-hmm. It traces the story in, I think it was West Virginia or Virginia, next to a DuPont plant that a local farmer suffered. His whole cattle herd, died because of the runoff. Mm-hmm. He himself got sick from it, people in the whole community. So a lot of those documentaries tell some of the story already. I just don't want to dive into details because it's so important to me that we're successful on this litigation because people are feeling the pain right now. The ratepayers are still getting the increase. And until we recover, we cannot stop that because we need to operate.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I want to be able to have knowledgeable people that are taking care of this, and I want you to be compensated fairly as well, obviously. So let's reverse engineer this. So I go to my sink, I get a glass of water. Help me backtrack. What happens? Where is the source of our water?
I'm so glad you asked that question because it's the number one question we get every summer when we issue water restrictions. Mm-hmm. How come we don't have an endless amount of water? We have a reservoir. It rained so much the last
Yeah.
month. Didn't they store all that water? Ridgewood Water does not have an open water reservoir. We do not get our water from a river or surface source. We are all groundwater, 52 groundwater wells. And those have limited capacity. They're scattered throughout the 4 communities. The water gets pumped out of those wells. They're about 200 feet to 1,000 feet or more deep. We have one well that's as deep as the Empire State Building is tall.
Wow.
Some of the wells date back to the beginning of this utility, over 100 years old. So the water gets pumped out of those wells. It then goes to a treatment plant, where back in the day, it literally just went out the door
And went through the pipes into my
your
sink.
faucet.
Right.
But as safe drinking water regulation evolved, at first in the 80s, we had a treat for something called volatile organic compounds. So that was the first time the system centralized. They went from 52 points to 31 treatment plants, and we strip those volatile organic compounds out of the water. We then chlorinate it to disinfect it. We then add a polyorthophosphate corrosion inhibitor. It's a food-grade product to prevent corrosion of those lead pipes
Right. Okay.
and copper pipes in your home.
Yep.
And then it goes out the door, gets pumped into the system, pressurized, and delivered to the hydrants and faucets, irrigation systems throughout the whole system. Now, because of PFAS, we are now adding an extra step, and there's already 2 of these plants operating. So odds are you're getting some of that blended water, and that extra step is now taking that water after that stripping tower, now pumping it through these huge, massive steel vessels that are full of granulated activated carbon. They're like your refrigerator filter on steroids.
Yeah.
They're tremendous, 12-foot diameter, some 24 feet tall, and then we then pump that again, same process out to you. We use a lot of energy. Our electric bill is about $1.5 million a year.
Wow.
So it's very electric intensive, a lot of work behind it, and people need to know when they turn the faucet on, it's not just an easy thing, that it's not set and forget, and it's always going to be there. A lot goes into it. 50 people work every day, and every consumer spends a lot of money to make sure that's going to happen.
And if you watch the arrival of these vessels when they arrived at the Prospect Station, which is down in Glen Rock,
Right.
they come in on a big crane. They look like huge propane tanks.
Yes.
At least that's what they look like to me. But they it's impressive. And one of the things we've tried to do, and I've worked with Rich and his team and our communications team at Village Hall, is to try to show people what this investment is going to get them. Because again, and I think you and I have had this conversation before, this is not the sexiest topic.
No.
Right? This is not paving someone's road or putting in a new park or making improvements at Graydon Pool or anything like that. This is all things that people don't see
Right.
and they don't understand. All they know, as you said, they turn on their shower or turn on their faucet in their kitchen, and
we
the
take
water,
it for
and
granted.
they take it for granted.
We really do.
But we really want people to see and understand what this investment is doing for them,
Yes.
and how significant these infrastructure projects that Ridgewood Water is taking on, are for the community.
And I'm going to say it's sacred. We have got to look at our water supply like it is sacred and that we must protect it. We can't be wasting water. So let's dive into that, because every summer we
Favorite
have.
topic.
Yeah, I can only imagine the phone calls y'all get. But yeah, so there's always water restrictions. There's phases of water restrictions. So walk us through that and tell us why people need to abide by these restrictions. And also, let's clarify, is it just Ridgewood that has to go through these restrictions, or is it everyone that Ridgewood Water serves?
No, it's everything to do is uniform throughout all 4 communities.
Okay.
Water restrictions are law in all 4 communities. All 4 communities are enforcing those regulations. Actually, 3 of the 4 have deputized our forces to actually go out there and hand out tickets in their communities. The other one's doing it on their own. So that's across the board. I mean, water conservation is so important because, as you mentioned, this is a resource. It's not going to be here forever if we keep abusing it. Groundwater wells have a life. They're feeding out of a groundwater aquifer. That aquifer is feeding out of water that's coming from a gazillion different places, rainfall that fell a year ago, some on the ground
So the rain that we have had this spring, and
not instantaneous.
right.
But if you overpump it, it goes away. That well could collapse. It starts pumping air. We got a lot of cloudy water calls in the summer because the wells are taxed. They're now pumping a lot of air, and that creates bubbles, and the water gets cloudy. We have to be mindful of the age of the system, the limits of the system, and being able to preserve it for the future. And we're doing well to build out that system, but we need customers to do their part as well. Everybody loves to put in the ground irrigation, set it, forget it, keep that nice green lawn, but there are other ways to do it. The lawn only needs a certain amount of water a week. And we're looking into studying better ways to actually maybe change the restrictions in the future to kind of leverage more flexibility, while at the same time give our system more time to catch up. Because right now it's the middle of the night, everybody turns it on at the same time, and the demand goes to a point that you can never imagine.
And going back to Rich's earlier point, we don't have an open air reservoir.
Right.
So the perception that there's some, large reservoir somewhere that we're pulling this water from, it doesn't exist. So any water utility in this area who operates through wells, similar to Ridgewood Water, is facing these same issues with water conservation. My biggest fear as the manager in talking to our fire department is that we need to have adequate water for fire suppression.
I want to talk about that.
And overwatering, and I'm just going to be blunt about it, overwatering through irrigation is the primary concern that we have, that there could be times, especially in the overnight period and things of that nature, that our pressures fall below where they need to be in order for people not only to take showers and operate, but also to have adequate fire response.
Right.
And we're actually currently working with Ridgewood Water. We're going to be doing a public service announcement inclusive of all 4 fire chiefs from the 4 service area towns to talk about the importance of water conservation. I think it's one thing when it comes from Ridgewood Water. It's another thing when you have your fire chief telling residents you really need to be aware of this.
Oh, God,
and I think there's no greater example of what happened in California last year.
Oh my God.
And we had our own fires here in New Jersey and in this area over the last 2 summers. The bottom line is there's only so much water. And depending on how far and vast a fire spreads, you're going to have limited water capacity to be able to pull. Our fire department is trained and has the capacity to put out a house fire,
right,
or to put out a fire, God forbid, downtown in one building. But when that spreads to 2 or 3 homes or an area, a wooded area, let's say, well, all of a sudden your capacity to put out that fire is reduced because you don't have adequate water supply. And that's one of the reasons that we're really stressing water conservation. Pay attention to the guidance that Ridgewood Water is putting out. Pay attention to the guidance that your irrigation company provides to you, because as Rich said, lawns only need so much water. We don't need to overwater them, and we're not asking anyone to not water their lawn. We're just asking them to do it in accordance with the ordinance that's on the books for the 4 towns.
And we can go over that too. Of what the restrictions are, and you also have the smart water systems. I want to talk about that because I think from what I'm gathering that Ridgewood Water is sort of endorsing those smart water systems.
Correct.
I know that there's been a little bit of pushback. I have a smart water system. Maybe just tell our listeners what it is and why they should have one.
So a smart controller does a few different things. It monitors the weather. It also monitors the dryness in the soil. If you have the proper probes installed with the system, it looks at areas of shade, how much sunlight is on each zone. All that's supposed to be programmed in together, and then it calculates on that basis a method of watering to obtain 1 inch of watering a week. That's the way it's supposed to run and how everybody's supposed to program it. About 50% of the people probably aren't doing that, and we're looking into enforcing that in the future. But for the most part, as a whole, smart controller permit holders are doing better than the system. Last year was a crazy year, as we all know, based on the weather. We had 2 months of no rain. It was one of the biggest demand years for Ridgewood Water. And we did a study and found that the smart control holders, on average, did better conserving as against the whole of consumers in the system. So it's working, but we could do better.
So when it comes to the restrictions, I think this was some of the pushback that I heard at the village council meetings, that the smart water systems, if you have a regular system, it is if you're on an odd numbered whatever
You
that
have your
goes
day, 2
these
days.
whatever it is.
Yep.
But the smart water system can water anytime. Explain that.
So we want to give the controller the ability to do what it's programmed to do, and that's decide when it needs to water based on all this information.
Because it could be once every 5 days,
It can know it's going to rain the next 5 days, and it shouldn't turn on at all. But if it's not programmed properly, it's not going to do that. So we didn't want to tighten it too much, where then people that are doing it and doing it properly are now in a position where they're not allowing it to think
right.
and do what it's supposed to do. So that's why I'm afraid of providing too much restrictions on that, because we're now finding that it is working as a whole.
Yeah.
We promote it because I think it's the future, but you have to have the right landscape company install it. You have to make sure they do all the programming and that they're not just putting it as a means of escaping the 2-day-a-week restrictions.
And when we, as the homeowner, we have to understand the ins and outs and the intricacies of this program too. There's a lot to learn.
There are resources out there. US EPA has the Water Sense program, where if you get a smart control, it has to be Water Sense certified, so they test these to make sure they have all the bells and whistles that do all this programming. But at the same time, they have resources available where you can go on that website and it tells you how it does all these different things. And it can be complicated, so I always advise people to get a professional.
Right.
But if you get the right professional and you do it properly, you'll find that you're going to save 20% of water or more.
Well, that's the other thing. It was a big money saver. And I also want to remind listeners, if you have this smart water system, it has to be registered annually.
Correct.
So that's important for people to know too. So I want to go back to the fire issue. When we built the multifamily housing units here in Ridgewood, there was a lot of pushback about, okay, well, that's going to use up a lot of our water. This is really not safe for us. We shouldn't have these. I would like to hear what your opinion is on that.
So I remember the back and forth on a lot of that. The thing is, when you look at garden apartments or apartments that such that were built in Ridgewood, the redevelopment, their water usage is very low. There's not a lot of lawns. It's mostly just domestic use, and there was a prior use there already from the commercial businesses that were there. So the total impact, the net impact, is not as significant as people might think it is.
Thank you for clarifying that. Because
no
I
lawns,
think,
no pools.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's right. And I think that's the other thing too, is that people that are really excited about putting pools in their backyard, it can be very wasteful for our water supply. Is that right?
It can. You have to maintain a level on those pools, and just these 3 days are a great example. I'm sure everybody's pools evaporated several inches, and they've needed to refill it. We try not to shy away from putting requirements on people's recreation. A lot of times back when we had the stage 3 and 4 restrictions, people would call me up and, can my kids go out in the sprinkler? Could they play? I was like, yes, you could do all that stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's
because you're not keeping it on for hours and
filling
hours.
your pool compared to an automatic system going on 2 nights a week or more, you cannot believe the amount of water that goes through a sprinkler head. And imagine just 20 of those on one property and then 20 houses on that same block doing it all at once. It's just a demand.
Staggering.
It's taxing on the system.
It really
The system was
is,
never built
yeah.
for that.
And I think it's really important too for people to make sure that their systems are maintained, because a lot of times those sprinkler heads can blow off and a lot of water comes out there too. So that's really important.
Rain sensors.
Yes.
It's mandatory to have a rain sensor to make sure the system shuts off when there's a quarter inch of rain or more. Those break often. And you're right. A lot of people have no idea how to run their system. They have no idea how the system was installed or what it consists of. And it was the biggest problem during the Board of Water Advisory, because we were asking people to shut their systems off. So we actually offered a program at that time where we teamed up with some local irrigation companies to help people shut their systems down. So people need to know about the appliances that are in their homes and how to work them.
And we're not trying to limit folks' recreation or limit the ability for them to keep their lawn nice.
Or penalize, yeah.
We're just looking for people to be pragmatic,
Right.
understanding the infrastructure that we're dealing with in the Ridgewood Water Service area. We're just asking people to help us out, be smart,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, look out for their own wallets.
Right.
These smart water control devices, have the ability to save the homeowner money in addition to help us manage the water
True.
use off that
Completely,
property.
yeah.
So in reality, it's a win-win, and we want people to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that people can conserve water. I know some of the people that I know, actually, when they're waiting for their shower to heat up, they have a bucket in their shower and they keep that water to flush their toilets. I mean, there's. It seems ridiculous, but I think that it's okay for us to really be concerned about conserving water. When you brush your teeth, shut the water off, right?
And Jeannie, Green Ridgewood took the initiative of helping to sell or promote the sale of rain barrels. Right? So
Oh,
if
yeah.
You're gonna irrigate your plants, your potted plants around your property.
Oh my gosh.
The collection of rain through a storm event and having that water requires us to not have to take it from the tap.
Oh,
and that's
yes.
those are the types of initiatives. Those small things add up,
Yes.
just like the overwatering. adds up.
Every drop counts.
I am a proponent of those rain barrels. I'm going to tell you, well, of course, my rain barrel is completely full because of the rains. And my plants are so beautiful because I'm using that water. I can't believe how happy I am that I have that rain barrel. So go over to Backyard Living. That was where I bought mine. I think there's a couple other places that you can get. I don't know if that's on your website or not, but
I don't think so.
if you're listening to this podcast, please get yourself a rain barrel. You will not regret it. It is such a helpful thing to have. So I just want to recap a couple of things that we've talked about, in terms of our water is super safe. We've got, right?
New Jersey is some of the safest water in the nation.
Right. I'm going to repeat that. New Jersey has some of the safest water in the nation. We do have forever chemicals in our water, but everyone has forever chemicals. And Ridgewood Water is going to beat the clock on the mandate from the federal government, and you will be ahead of the game by 5 years. You're paying for it through your long lost insurance claims, grants, and other ways, so it is not going to affect the ratepayer.
And the litigation.
And the litigation, right? It's very, very important for us to follow those guidelines, those restrictions, right? And they go in. Are we in any phase right now?
No, we're in the regular 2-day-a-week stage.
Okay.
We've put out a release to try to avoid getting to the next stage.
Right.
Urging people that we had the rains and more rain is coming. So to really take your time, and look at your system and maybe water just one day this week, not both days. I mean, BPU from New Jersey put out something about air conditioning. It told everybody lower your air conditioning by 1 degree.
Or higher it, so it's
Or
not,
higher.
right,
Sorry, the other
yeah,
way.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with water. You see it's over 100 degrees 3 days in a row. You know the system has these issues with the infrastructure, and we're working to correct it. Take a day off.
Yeah.
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 And the psychology on rain is sort of interesting because I've had people
Yes.
call my office and they said, well, there's been so much rain, we can use more water. And really the thought process should be there's so much rain, we can use less water. And that's the philosophy that we're trying to share.
Yeah, and I think people really need to understand that rainwater, it takes a long time for us to be able to use that because, as you said, it's going into the wells and it takes a long time to get there.
Correct.
So I think this has been a really informative conversation. I don't want to leave anything out, so I want you to tell me, is there anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, the only other thing I would mention, because of everything that Ridgewood Water and the Village of Ridgewood has done, last year we were the first recipient of New Jersey's Our Water's Worth It Award. New Jersey DP Commissioner came and gave us the award to recognize all our efforts around PFAS and water conservation.
Congratulations. That was one of my final question was, what are you the most proud of? Would that be it?
I'm proud of that, but I'm proud of the reason we got that, and it's the 50 people that work for Ridgewood Water. They come to work every day, and they do that job.
And they do it with such passion, too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, having been here now almost 2 years, there are really good things happening at Ridgewood Water. They are taking our challenges seriously, and we're not without challenges. I don't want anybody to think that we're on a clear runway here, but we are on a path to completing the PFAS projects by the end of next year, end of 2026. We are on a path to work in our distribution system to be able to move water from zone to zone and get it where it needs to be. especially in the higher elevations of the system. And we are aggressively pursuing multiple opportunities for folks to address their lead service lines, whether that's on their own, whether that's through the state program that will allow them to pay it off over 30 years, so that the financial piece doesn't become a reason why it can't be done on that property. But they are doing really good things over at Ridgewood Water, and I'll leave you with one thing. Whatever the perception of Ridgewood Water might have been in the past, I can attest to the fact that that is not the way Ridgewood Water is today, and we are going to work hard to let people know that as we move forward.
I really appreciate your leadership, both of you, because this is an issue that I've been following for several years, long before you even got here, and I really agree with you on that. Leadership is key. You've done a phenomenal job. Thank you so much. And I want all of our listeners, if you want to learn more about Ridgewood Water, you have a very robust website, and you also have a very competent and good leader in terms of putting things out there on social media. You're keeping us informed about road closures when you're out there working. So congratulations on all the work that you've done. It is greatly appreciated.
And you could call us. Pick up the phone and call us.
What's the number?
201-670-5520, or walk in our doors, 111 North Maple Avenue.
Right next to Village Hall. It's a great new facility too that we didn't even start talking about that. But yeah, so thanks again, you guys, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're really super grateful for Rich and Keith chatting with us today and shedding light on what's really going on with Ridgewood Water. And I also want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in to this important episode of Ridgewood Talks. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe to the podcast on all major platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to watch or listen. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok now. And by the way, I need to give a special shout out to Gil Edwards and the amazing production team at Ignite Creator Studios for bringing our podcast to life now with video. And if you'd like to have your very own podcast, please consider Ignite Creator Studios right here in Ridgewood. They do a fantastic job and can help you get your message out to the masses. So until next time, I am Jeanne Johnson, and thank you so much for tuning in to Ridgewood Talks. See you next time.